Welcome to Digital Audience Engagement. This is the second in our Town Hall series, Accessibility and New Normal Talks. I want to give a special thanks to Betty Siegel, to Jan Majewski at the Institute for Human-Centered Design, and to Beth Zebarth, Access Smithsonian, for starting this series. How do we keep our audiences engaged with accessible digital content? This is a big challenge for all of us. We are looking at many months now of this in New York City. We got the news yesterday that our theaters are going to remain closed till the late winter or March. Several of us are going to speak very briefly on the challenges we're facing, how we're solving those problems, and then we're going to open this up to what we hope will be a very productive collective discussion. I'd like to begin with Christina Trevino. Christina, please tell us about captioning for online content and equitable access.
Yes, I'm happy to talk about captions. For pre-recorded videos, we usually start on YouTube because YouTube tries to auto caption videos, which saves us a little bit of time. You can't rely on the auto captions because they're going to be poor to hilarious at the start, but you can go into YouTube Studio and edit the captions after they have been automatically captioned. And then once you have done that and you're happy with your captions, you can export that file, it's called an SRT file, and use it on other platforms. You can use that on Facebook if that's where you're posting your digital content, whether that's an ad or a organic post. Facebook allows you to use SRT files. On Instagram, you can only use an SRT file if it is an advertisement. If you are posting organic content on Instagram, you need to burn those captions onto the video itself. We are using Adobe Premiere, which allows you to change the font sizes and things like that. If you don't have the money for Adobe Premiere, there is an app called Headliner app that we also have used. It allows you to caption 10 videos a month for free, but there's a watermark, so there's a trade-off. Twitter also allows you to upload an SRT file for your captions. Most people don't realize that because you can't actually do it on the timeline. So it's not, I'm going to tweet something and I can add the SRT file there. You have to go to media.twitter.com to upload SRT files to videos on Twitter or use their ad platform. And then for live videos, such as we're doing now, Zoom allows you to assign someone to do the captions, as we're doing today. There are also integrations. If you have the largest of Zoom packages, they have an integration with a platform called Otter. And if you are a teacher working with students, they have an integration with a platform called Rev, which we have not used, but they are available. I have read about them and they're auto captions, not human-powered captions. We did have to do a live video stream for an event, and we could not caption that in advance. I used a platform called OBS, Open Broadcast Software, to trick YouTube into thinking that pre-recorded video was actually live. It was a little bit complicated, and I thought I'd be able to send that video off and get it professionally captioned in advance, but our event kept changing in the lead up to the event, and I had to rely on live captions. So I used a website that also provides auto captions for free called webcaptioner.com. I was able to overlay that into the video itself so that people wouldn't have to use a separate window. And in addition to that, we've also emailed all of our members about how to turn on captions on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and about these free third-party options that are out there if the content itself doesn't have it, because we can only control our content. We can't change it. If someone else posted the video, we can only tell them this is a supplemental option in those cases.
Good. I want to jump to Elise and tell us how successful are accessible watch parties. You do a lot of them.
Hi, everyone. So let me start by telling you what a Facebook watch party is, because I know that's not a term that's familiar for everybody. Facebook gives you the ability to host a watch party, which just means you have the ability to show a video that everybody will watch at the same time. So it's a shared viewing experience. You can do this on your personal page or your fan page. The icon for it is a bucket of popcorn. And so you can start a watch party by either going to create a post as you normally would and clicking the popcorn bucket and saying start watch party, and you'll have the ability to choose either videos that you have watched before, or you can search for videos that are live right now. And you can actually also go to a video that is happening live right now and hit start watch party and share it that way. So you have those two options for starting a watch party. And we have found this to be maybe not a substitute for live theater, but a way to engage our community to have a shared viewing experience while Broadway is shut down. And the kind of content we show are live play readings, pre-recorded concerts, the Drama Desk Awards, anything related to theater, because that is what our audience wants to see. But you would have to think about what kind of watch parties you could hold for your audience. And as far as making them accessible, if the video starts off sourced with captioning, those captions will carry over into your watch party. But if they don't, you can simply put in the chat a link to the web captioner that Christina mentioned earlier.
Okay.
I saw an Alvin Ailey watch party where they simultaneously posted a link to an audio described performance on YouTube so that people could watch it in conjunction with the video they were airing on their watch party.
Okay.
So I thought that was a nice option.
Thank you, Elise. What can we do for our ticket buyers for autism sensory-friendly performances? This is a challenge for us. And TDF tried something this month. We did a talkback for our March 1st autism-friendly performance of Harry Potter. Two lead actors in the show, James Snyder, who played Harry Potter, and Nicholas Podani, who played Albus Potter, his son, generously donated their time for a closed Zoom 30-minute talkback. We emailed all the ticket buyers to that March 1st performance and invited them to this talkback and said, send in your questions. We chose the 10 best questions the audience members sent in, and the actors went to it. It was a wonderful model to build on, because it was a way of reaching this community, bringing them together with a shared experience, and it's something we want to build on. So that's a model we are looking at moving forward, as well as considering other events. What are we going to do for people who are blind or have low vision? I'm going to turn this over to Larissa, because we thought this boon in audio plays was going to be our solution. Larissa, what did we find out?
Well, first of all, I'm Larissa. I'm also from TDF. I'm the manager of accessibility services. So what we've been doing for our members with disabilities is sending out e-blasts with resources for them. And most of those resources have been audio or radio plays. We figured that would be accessible to those folks who have vision loss. And there's really not a lot of content available online that has audio description. So we were hoping that this would sort of fill that void. Some of the things we've been sending out are free audio plays from LA Theater Works, WNYC and the Public Theater's free Shakespeare on the radio, Audible Theater, things like that. Just anything we can find that we think would be interesting for our members. We haven't been getting a lot of feedback from them on whether they're enjoying or even using these things. So we just took a look at our statistics on Wordfly to see what our click rate is. And the click rate is for all the people who are receiving this email, who's actually opening it and clicking on the links that we're sending them. So we found out that our engagement is super low. It's only about 1%, and this is being sent out to about 11,000 of our members who have disabilities, all kinds of disabilities, not just people who are blind or have low vision. And we don't know exactly what's going on, why people aren't interested, but some of our thoughts are that, one, people are just not as excited about these virtual experiences as they are about going to the theater. Sitting in your living room and just listening to a play can be wonderful, but it's a very different experience from actually going out and seeing a Broadway show. Second, we think some people are really just experiencing burnout at this point. Everyone's getting so many emails every day with different things to do online that we think people are just over it. Especially a lot of our members tend to be older, so a lot of digital engagement for them just isn't really of interest. But we do think that people would have a great interest if there was content available with audio description, if it was done properly and it was done in a really similar way to what we do when we're doing it in the theater. But it is important to remember that people have preferences when it comes to audio description. Some people really only want to listen to a particular describer or someone who's using a particular style of description. So even if you do decide that you're going to be providing audio description for online content, it's important to remember that that doesn't automatically mean you're going to have a huge audience of people who are blind or have low vision. So it's really important to make sure that you're including the community while you're talking about this, planning out what you're going to do, just to make sure you're giving them what they really want and not just what you think would be useful for them.
Thank you, Larissa. And this is a good segue into the person who has come the farthest to join us, Louise Fryer. Tell us about your experience with audio description for the National Theatre and for Donmar Warehouse.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm Louise. I'm an audio describer mostly at the National Theatre, and I also work for a company called Vocalized, who describe lots of West End shows. And what we found was that we've all had to become pretty much expert sound engineers. So what happens is, I'm just going to talk through the process. The National Theatre will contact us and say, we're going to have a described version of this play that we're streaming from our NT at Home series. So they contact the describer who's already described it live in the theatre. So we have our scripts from that, and then we get sent the filmed version and we try and match the two or rewrite to reflect the different shot changes, because maybe you've described a whole scene and only part of it is visible because they're going to show a close-up. So we try and make sure it reflects what everybody else is watching. And then we'll add time codes, so maybe using freeware such as Reaper or maybe subtitling software of the types that Christina mentioned. So annotation edit or headliner or web captioner, anything that will give you a time code so that you can log in when your description starts and when it stops, because the dialogue starts again. Then we record it at home, everyone making their own home studios by having a microphone and duvets to soften the sound and everything. And then we'll edit it and send the final WAV file to someone at the National Theatre who's a real audio engineer, and then they'll lay it over the filmed version, and the two versions will be streamed at the same time. So there'll be one link for the play itself and then another link for the play with AD. And then the Donmar Warehouse did something slightly different because they only had the introductory notes. I'm not sure if you always have an introduction before the show starts, but that's what we do in the UK. And so that's hosted on the website of the theatre or maybe a company such as Vocalized. And then people can at least have descriptions of the characters and the settings and something about the visual style of the piece, even if the show itself doesn't have a through description. So the show that I worked on for the Donmar didn't need a through description because it's a one-woman show. And the conceit was that she was recording video messages for her daughter. So all you really saw of her was her face and a background of a room in her house. So much like we're seeing now. So it didn't need lots of description, but it did need that setup described and something about what the woman herself looked like. So there were live notes and that was it. So it's very partial, but it was some degree of access anyway.
Okay, thank you so much, Louise. I want to jump to Rich because I want you to tell us about the public's YouTube American Sign Language playlist and how this fits into the public's commitment to accessibility. You're the only example that I could find of a theater who's out there really doing what they can for sign language users. So go to it, Rich.
Thank you, Lisa. My name is Rich Denny. I'm the Director of Audience Services for the Public Theater. With the cancellations of shows this spring, I apologize, I need to slow down. I'm a fast talker, so I apologize, I'll slow down. With the cancellation of shows this spring, the public and our many artistic programs have sprung into action creating new digital content. I think that's the one big difference. I will preface that we are very lucky that we are in a very good financial place because of our producing of a musical that premieres on Disney Plus on Friday. But we're in a good financial place that a lot of the work that we've been putting out is new content and new digital content. And one of those specifically, which kind of started this all for us, was the Brave New Shakespeare Challenge, where we have been working with artists and challenging them to reinterpret monologues and soliloquies from their home in Mandarin, Spanish, through music, and American Sign Language. As the American Sign Language content grew, I shared that out with TDF, with Hands-On and YAI, which are our three main partners in accessibility at the Public Theater. And I got a phone call from Beth Prevor, and it was a challenge. It was a challenge to do more, just simply do more. From that, we've made a decision. We've refocused our accessibility page on the website to include playlists as we add each new level of accessibility for our new content. So we have a American Sign Language, both performances and interpretation playlist. We are in the process of our next new piece that is being put out called The Line, which is a docuplay based off of interviews with first responders to the COVID-19 pandemic in New York City, and cutting through the media and everything else and trying to just bring their stories forward. That will have audio description as well as American Sign Language and closed captioning and Spanish closed captioning offered. But with each of those different levels of accessibility, we are creating new playlists so that as people find them or if people need them, they are able to go back to the same space every time. We are also very lucky that a lot of our teams are internal. Our video and audio teams have been very intricate in bringing in American Sign Language to our videos, ranging from live interpretations, from the cancellation of our We Are One Public Gala, which I know put Beth and our interpreters on the spot for that event because we pivoted very quickly. But it's really was a fantastic experience. But I think the other thing that I want to challenge everyone is that every new piece we're putting out, we are starting in the discussion of how do we bring access and how do we include access to our videos. And we're not just talking about access for our audience. We are openly having conversations about how do we include artists who are deaf, artists who are blind, artists with mobile disabilities, because we are no longer bound by the restrictions of our building. We're no longer bound by the restrictions of time and travel. We all have these really amazing little cameras in our pockets. And so we are really working to include those artists because we know that they are disproportionately affected without having regular access to working in the arts. And so it really fits with inside of our mission to not only continue to expand our accessibility, but also how do we do better and bring in the right artists so that everyone is represented. And actually The Line will be interpreted by all deaf artists. We're not using any interpreters at this point in time. Beth and the team have worked to find us interpreters and deaf artists from across the country to be included because those communities have been affected just as much as the rest of us.
Thank you, Rich. That was great. We've got almost 40 minutes. The meeting is yours. We would love to hear your questions, your thoughts, share with us what you are doing. I'm going to ask Larissa to monitor the questions as they come in and ask away, or comments.
Feel free to raise your hand or to type out your question in the chat if you prefer. Oh, Beth, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't know if I was going to get called on. Hi. I guess I just wanted to bring up this idea from, I guess, coming from what Larissa was talking about, just in terms of like the marketing aspect of all this new media. And I guess trying to remember that, you know, the old adage, like if they build it, they will come, and they won't, is something to really remember, that whatever kind of access programs we set up, like that were live, took time to build audiences to come, and we're now dealing with a whole new platform. And I think, you know, your point that people are getting overwhelmed with material at this point. I mean, I appreciate the fact that probably the first 3 months of this, there was so much stuff that was just being thrown out, and not a lot was being accessible, just because I think people were just trying to find their way. And now that I think everybody has had a chance to kind of take a breath and sit back and recognize that we're probably going to be in this for a little while longer, that like how to do it in a way that is both not overwhelming to our communities, as well as giving like us a time to build a new audience or build a different audience. And I mean, I think, you know, working with Rich and the public, and, you know, this idea about working with like community talent was really important for especially this first one, because I think, as has been noted, there hasn't been a lot of work that's been produced for culturally deaf people, like with sign language, in terms of that kind of access. And so, I mean, for me, one is it was really important to, you know, provide a forum for deaf artists, because I think that, you know, as with everybody, you know, people are hurting and there's less opportunities, and, you know, money is tight. And so that was one aspect of it. But the other part too is really just also looking at the material that we're putting out, that, you know, it was a great experience working with Rich and the public to just go, I want to be judicious about what we put out. I mean, I don't want to just say that everything that we start with should be the first one that we start with, and really kind of looking at it from like a marketing perspective and seeing what is going to draw people. And from my perspective, getting 7 deaf artists is a way to draw a deaf audience to see people. So that was a really conscious choice on our part as to how we wanted to start this, to then build an audience. Because I know, like, different communities, I mean, I work a lot with the deaf community, so I know they've been doing programming themselves. I mean, there's been Deaf Broadway, and there's been Facebook Live parties, and there's definitely been within that community, they've been kind of working on like access within the community. So in terms of like this foray into like mixed access, or kind of just kind of opening up access to other organizations, is I wanted to be able to kind of pair those two parts together and see, because now I have 7 deaf artists who will go out and promote themselves to their community, and hopefully, you know, bring a new audience to this work from the public. So I just think that we need to kind of like take back you know, just stand back a little bit and just kind of remember that we really have to market it in a way that we can't just kind of send an email and expect that the audience is just going to show up.
Good point. More questions, more thoughts. What do you?
We have Meredith has a question for Christina about using OBS.
Yeah, so when you go live on YouTube, it's going to ask you if you want to use your web camera or if you want to hook up to a stream. And OBS, you download it to your computer, and it'll ask you for all of the same stream information that YouTube is providing. It's just copying and pasting like 2 little or 3 little bits of code. And then OBS itself You can go live also with your camera within OBS, or you can add media into it. You can add pictures into it. You can add videos into it. I think it's pretty self-explanatory once you have it open. You can sort of cheat Zoom into doing something similar. I mean, you can use Zoom to stream to YouTube and do a screen share instead of using your camera to be doing the live on YouTube. It's just, I think, nice to not have to worry about so many tech problems in the moment to have some recorded content. And the providing captions within OBS is, so I had Web Captioner open in a thin, narrow frame in a separate window on my computer. And I told OBS to insert that frame onto the video. And then there was an ability to give it a green screen effect so that at moments when no one was speaking, that, you know, it wouldn't show like the background square on the captions that would go away when nothing was being said. I was mostly Googling this stuff as I was learning to do it, because it was the first time I had to do any of these things. I had to learn all of that for this one program that we did, and I'm certain I'll be able to use it again and again. But it was fascinating, but also I think intuitive. If you download OBS, it should be easy how to add video to the platform. And I'm happy to talk to you guys further about it if you get the platform and you have more questions.
Hi, this is Meredith. Thank you so much. That was really helpful.
No problem.
Great. We have another question. Betty is asking Rich to talk about what content is most popular.
Yes, I think Beth answered a little bit of this, and I think we're seeing a growing trend specifically. You know, being the public, we're very lucky. So far, our Brave New Shakespeare challenges, where we're interpreting different Shakespeare monologues and soliloquies, we've been able to feature John McGinty, Dickie Hartz, and Alexandria Wales, who was in our production of For Color Girls in the fall, Linda Bove, and now Monique Holt. So we have access to a deep register of artists, and our casting department is really fantastic in reaching out and contacting people. I think what's going to be our most popular, though, is The Line. It will be the first full piece, 45 minutes, that has been realized in a digital theater format, and that we're going to have each artist represented by a deaf cast member and in the interpretation. And so I really think we're going to see that be our most popular. But you know, when I first shared the video playlist with Lisa and Beth and YAI, I think we had 3 videos, and that was probably about 3 weeks ago. And now we're at 7 videos. So we're almost adding a video a week, and we're incorporating deaf artists and interpretation pretty often as we can, because as I said, we're having those conversations from each inception.
Great, thank you, Rich. Next up, Louise, go for it.
Okay, I wanted to make 2 comments already, but I'm going to make 3. I'm going to say, first of all, that I totally agree with Beth, and the importance of people knowing that it's happening and knowing where to find information is huge and can't be underestimated. I think we haven't got that sorted in the UK yet. I mean, there's information all over the place. We use social media, we use the theatre's website, we use Vocalize as a kind of centralized space. They're letting their website be available so that people can go and find out what's happening. So that's something that we need to get sorted. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that one theatre, the Old Vic, has started offering Live Aid, just using the translator option on Zoom. So you can have an interpreter option, I think. Can't remember where it is. I think it's down by the participants somewhere. So you can choose to have a translator, and then that way only the people who want to hear the AD can hear the AD, and anybody else can listen to the show without it. And it gives more of a sense of a live performance in that the describer is live. So you're watching it with somebody in the same way that you would be in a theatre. And it's not quite the same. And so picking up pretty much on what Rich was saying, the other major movement over here is towards integrated description, whereby you don't have an external describer come along and add the description afterwards. You have description woven into the show. So either through the dialogue or a character who adds a description or some kind of device, so that if it was, for example, a cop show and there was an interview, you'd get someone to describe for the tape recorded interview. So I think this exercise shows us that that kind of integrated description is really a key way, because then you don't have to scramble around trying to find ways of making stuff accessible. It's necessarily accessible from the beginning. So that was a point I wanted to make.
Wonderful. Next, we have a Paige who has a question about the autism-friendly talkback. Lisa, if you want to take that.
Yes. How did it work? The question?
The question is, what resources were provided before the sensory-friendly talkback? Did you share a social story? Did your artist have any training before leading this?
All the preparation was to see the performance on March 1st. So the audience members had already received a social story, character guide, you name it, they had it. And basically it was just time with the actors. It's the way we would conduct a talkback in the theater if we had one. We didn't for Harry Potter, which was so wonderful that we could have a virtual one this month. We had our lead autism specialist, Becca Uray, give the questions to the actors and answer them. So she served really as our teaching artist, if you will. And also the audience members recognized her from seeing her for the March 1st performance. Those that chose to be on video were so excited to be there. What we did need to say was that that if they did not wish to be seen on the screen, you know, to block their videos, because we wanted to be very protective of the families there. It just flowed. It was a very easy thing to do, and seeing familiar faces, I think, particularly with Becca, made all the difference. But the actors carried it. They were wonderful. I hope that answers your question.
Next, we have sort of a general question from Carolyn asking if there's a tech guide somewhere that can teach us non-techies how to set up digital aids. So I think if anyone has anything like that they'd like to share, go ahead and throw that link into the chat and we'll make sure that gets added to the website that's going to have all our resources listed there. And then next up, we have Maddie asking Rich some money questions about how they're paying artists right now while we're doing everything digitally.
Absolutely. So for us in New York, we are under Actors Equity specifically. And we love our professional relationship with Actors Equity, but they have not really expanded upon their relationship with digital content. So we have moved a lot of our contracts for new digital content using artists who are deaf under SAG-AFTRA. And so we're doing a lot of our contract work through SAG-AFTRA. The only moment that is not true is, for instance, with The Line, we are hiring deaf artists to do the interpretations of the play itself, and so they are being hired under as interpreters and not under the SAG-AFTRA contract. So it's kind of alternating based off of the function and role that they are playing when doing either their performance or the interpretation itself.
Thank you, Rich. So everyone knows this will be recorded and put on a web page on the website for the Institute for Human-Centered Design. So we'll be sure to share all of our resources and this recording with you afterwards, because there is so much info just in this one little hour. Any other questions here that I've missed from folks?
Are there no more questions with this wealth of talent here? Oh, Beth.
But this is not so much a question. I just really want to go back, that Louise kind of supported it too. I mean, this whole idea of marketing and how you reach the communities is just really important. And I think too that in this kind of digital age, you know, asking people to kind of do a short video or do a promotion for you. I mean, we're kind of living in an age where, you know, everybody's sitting by their computers. So your ability to get somebody of recognition, like name recognition, you know, whether it's star power or somebody to kind of promote some of your services that might be of specific interest to the community that you're looking to engage is possible. So, you know, I'm just kind of saying that it's like, just like think outside of the box about like reaching out to somebody who's going to be the link to the community that you want to get and the programs that you want to offer. And you know, we were able, you know, we were able to do a video with John Lithgow, you know, and I had somebody send him an email, and he was lovely and sent us an email, and you know, he did a video for us, and it was great. And so, you know, it's that kind of marketing strategies, which I think is just kind of like applying whatever marketing you would be doing if you were in your space on this medium is just really similar. We really have to start thinking about like creative ways to re-engage an audience and get them back. Because the other thing too is I don't think that this is going away. I mean, I mean, not the COVID, I hope that goes away. But I mean, I just think this idea of digital, I think that there's, you know, we're going to come out of this and there's going to be things that we just go, you know, that was actually a really good use of this that I never thought about. We just did a 3-day theater interpreting workshop, well, digital, and it was great. And we definitely kind of came away with, there are things that we learned from how we did it that we can take and continue and probably will continue. So it's, I think when we do come back, it's going to be some combination of both live and digital. And so it's, I don't think we want to lose what we're learning or what we're learning here. And I think there's going to be ways to take advantage of that.
Great. We had a request for Tina to share what she's hearing from the hard of hearing community and what they're looking for.
Hi, everybody. I told Betty, I'm like, thanks for outing me and having me talk. So I noticed in the chat box that someone brought up the Philly Art Reach. It was also in partnership with the New York Art Reach. And actually, I co-presented that with Marilee Talkington, who, if you don't know who she is a blind actor, producer, director. She's phenomenal. And she makes really beautiful masks too. And so I would say from a deaf and hard of hearing standpoint, you know, as someone that has been watching some of these virtual performances, for me, what's probably the hardest thing is being able to split my attention between trying to enjoy the actors, but also watch an interpreter or watch captioning, which is something that we have to do also when we go to live theater. But like if you're trying to watch something on a small computer screen, I mean, if you see my mission control right now, it's a little ridiculous with like 2 monitors and like another, you know, computer monitor on my laptop. And I can like split it, but if you're trying to watch something really, really small, or if you don't have good internet connection and everything is really choppy and you really rely on that visual aspect, you know, even if you're trying to lip read, that can be really hard. And I think too, one thing that I'm learning is that there is a wide range of computer savviness for being able to get online and to be able to know to go to gallery view versus speaker view. And I think that a really great project, and this has been, I have, my to-do list is ridiculous, is to do like really consumer friendly, like how to use some of these platforms that's accessible. Because, you know, for those of you that have put on virtual performances, I don't know if you noticed, but you're spending the first 15 minutes hand-holding some people, like, how do I get the closed captioning? How do I see the speaker? You know, how do I, you know, use what it, you know, people don't even know that when, you know, someone is sharing their screen, for example, that there's that little, the line, the divider in between the screen that's being shared in the speakers, and that you can move it over and make things bigger and smaller. People don't know stuff like that. And so we have to think about, you know, not just the tech savvy people from that perspective, but, you know, we need to, I think, you know, especially if people are older, and kind of, I think what'll be most beneficial about all of this craziness that's happening is that people will be more exposed to things like accessibility and accommodations. I mean, we're seeing that already. I know I'm going off a little bit with like masks and people not being able to see people's faces and how much harder, you know, that is. So I think we can kind of leverage that also when we talk about the benefits of having accommodations for theater. So I hope that answers some of your questions.
Great. And I think I was missing Janet. Janet, did you have a question? Go for it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Janet. I'm with the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission. I openly identify as autistic. So there's actually a huge contingent of us from assorted public spaces that are participating because we really wanted to hear from your expertise. But I'm assuming that many of the people in theater also participated in community events and less structured situations. So I think in your experience, like, what would you like to see, or what have you heard people want to experience in those spaces? Like public museums and historic sites, and, you know, because we have a lot of like reenactors and things like that.
Beth Seabarth, want to take that on, anyone? Where are our museum people? Hannah. Oh, she's on mute.
Don't forget, y'all, this can be interactive, so you're in control of your mute. And it's great that everybody's kept themselves muted so that we aren't listening to a bunch of background noise. But as Larissa calls off, or you have a comment to make or something to add.
Larissa, can you unmute Hannah? Hannah Goodwin, please.
Yes, let me find her.
I can unmute.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed part of the question because I had a call that came in. So I was being quiet because I didn't want to answer the wrong question. So if you tell me what you would like me to speak to, I will share.
Oh, sure. So basically, I'm leaving it a little more open-ended than I probably have to, but there are a lot of us that are from the museum world that are grappling with accessibility, and, you know, we don't have the sort of professionalism built in with like the multi-layered presentation, but we do a lot of living history. We do a lot of you know, maybe like short videos and things like that. And so we're kind of looking for perspective on public spaces and this level of presentation. We're basically learning on the fly with you guys.
Okay, well, I can, so I did catch it. I mean, I think this is a big conversation to have because most museums have so many different things that we're doing. So we have tours and performances and classes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So some of the things that we have done have been actually quite similar to what the theater folks were talking about in terms of taking what would have been a live event and doing a combination of pre-recorded videos and some live streaming. Actually, what I'd like to just share is we've been doing a lot of tours on Zoom for specific audiences. So descriptive tours, tours for people with memory loss, tours for a number of our different partners who are coming to the museum on a regular basis. And they have been very specific to those groups. And we also piloted, pilot for us, a tour that was captioned specifically for a hard of hearing audience that comes to the museum regularly and uses assistive listening devices and is feeling shut out of a lot of different opportunities. So I feel like I'm not really sharing anything very innovative except that we're just doing things and with each situation looking at what do we need to do to make this work. And really for a lot of it is again fairly basic. Some of the key things have been to have someone who's dedicated to the technology, because we're finding that each audience has its own needs. So for example, a group of people with memory loss and their relationship to doing something on Zoom versus in person, there are a series of things that we need to think through. Doing a descriptive tour for people who are congenitally blind, but also who have recently lost their vision, and an audience range of people who are calling in on landlines and cell phones and tablets and PCs, and that there's a technology piece there that needs to be built in. So we've started doing tech checks so that people can log in 15 minutes early. We give people phone numbers that they can text or call if they have trouble. And we've figured out some things like using a link to share music works better if it's embedded in Google Slides than PowerPoint. You know, so this is all really low tech, meet your visitor where you're at, I think has kind of been our approach. I think there's a lot of things that we've learned that I'd like to take forward and be able to do in kind of a bigger way. But actually I think we've had kind of a good time sharing some of the museum in a different way. So anyway, I don't know if that was helpful or not, but that's what we're doing.
Absolutely, because actually I'm pretty passionate about dementia care. I used to be a caretaker in a unit, and so when you're talking about doing special programs for memory loss and things like that, that just lights my fire. So I'm thrilled with your answers.
Well, if you'd like to talk more, please feel free to reach out to me. The more of us that can talk, I think the more we can do. So
yeah, there's probably a handful of you that are definitely going to hear from me. So hi.
All right, we have about 10 minutes left. We have Allie in the chat who is asking about strategies for building new virtual audiences. If anyone has any tips or advice, feel free to unmute and answer Allie.
Allie, this is Katie from Artreach in Philadelphia. One thing that my colleague Alex Boyle and I came across recently, the Barnes Foundation that's based out of Philadelphia for their K through 12 programs, especially with kind of special education platform, actually started using Twitch, which is very familiar to anyone who does any online video gaming. And they were seeing record numbers of attendance from school-age children who were used to going online at all hours of the day and playing Fortnite or other such video games, and actually accessing the museum collection online and having some really interactive conversations. And I am not familiar at this point with sharing full out accessibility features and whether or not captioning is a probability. I don't want to throw Tina under the bus again, but whether or not Twitch is the most accessible format. But I will say that I haven't seen anything of its kind as of yet where it's really meeting an audience where they are. And when I say the video gaming community doesn't leave the virtual realm for like 10 to 12 hours a day sometimes. And so to not necessarily we want to advocate for hours and hours of more screen time, but I think it was a really positive experience for the Barnes Foundation, and they're looking to relaunch that again with some partnerships with the School District of Philadelphia in the fall.
Go ahead, Tina.
I'm too old for Twitch and TikTok. I don't think I understand that. No, I'm just well, I'm not just kidding, but I'm not familiar with Twitch that much, but I think I will have to investigate it now. So thank you. You totally meant to throw me under the bus, but it's all good.
Okay, we have Beth in the chat who's asking about strategies to bridge the digital divide for people who may not have that access. If anyone has tips for that, go ahead and unmute.
I just want to say that Zoom is accessible by a landline, and we haven't encountered anyone yet who can't access something. But that does really rely on description. So anyway, it's not the only thing. I know there are some places that have sent some things. Some of the museums in New York have sent materials out in advance. I can't speak to the details of that, but might be another option.
I'll jump in with something. Oh, sorry. We've run into situations where people don't have access to Wi-Fi and they don't have personal devices. So that is a challenge for us in terms of how to gather people together to watch digital content. I don't know if any of you have run into that or not, but it's something we're trying to sort through.
Yeah, and we've also chosen our platforms based on things like equity considerations. You know, you can use YouTube without having an account. You can't do the same thing with Facebook, at least not yet. I posted a link in the chat. Facebook is considering a lot of things now, like having audio mode on streams. So if you don't have a great internet connection, you'd still be able to access that content. They are rolling it out, though. Whether or not you can find it would depend on how big your pages are that you're following. I'm sure they're going to release it on, like, you know, news sources and Pepsi and sort of big brands before it trickles down to sort of smaller nonprofits. But we're not the only ones having those conversations. The platforms are as well.
We also in the public library have sent out material in a bunch of the libraries in Suffolk County, have sent out a lot of the materials ahead of time for programming to make it more engaging for people who are watching or listening. And then so they feel like they're part of the experience.
Tina, you can go ahead.
So something that, well, two things. Number one, there have been times where audio and video are very mismatched, or for some reason you can't get the audio signal well through the computer. And I know that some people will dial into meetings with the phone number if there is a phone number associated with like a Zoom meeting, but that's not always the case. Not all meetings have that, but for a person that's deaf or hard of hearing, what that means is that they can use a captioning app on their telephone then to access it. I mean, there's going to be a significant delay in terms of latency if you do it that way, meaning that, you know, what you see on screen and then the words pop up like 2 or 3 seconds later, but at least they will be, you know, having some, you know, text of what's happening. The second thing that, you know, someone was talking about correctional facilities in the chat, and I think that a lot of our like virtual performances are recorded now, right? You know, we're recording things like this, and if there was a way to make a library where you could put something on DVD for people to then put into a DVD player or to put it onto their computer, you know, like go back to old school Netflix. You know, maybe that's something that, you know, can accommodate those people that might not have a Wi-Fi connection. So just a thought.
I also wanted to throw out there that while people can call into the Zoom meetings and go to meeting and things like that, the initial contact is made via an email. And so if you don't know that that meeting is happening, even though you can call in, it makes it more complicated as well.
Okay, we don't have too much time left. I know Rich has been waiting, so go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, it's been something on my mind since last week's meeting regarding museums specifically, and I just need to jump back into it because it's been heavily on my mind, and it's on my mind and our planning on returning. There was a lot of talk last week about upping staff and more staff on the floor and more people to help, which is really important for accessibility. But knowing the history of our Black and Indigenous and people of color being negatively affected by staffing and overstaffing, and it also rings true in theater. It is true. And it's difficult to say this because I work really hard to make the public as accessible as possible, but I have to know that there are internal biases that are happening inside our audiences, with our audiences. Has my customer service training been developed? Possibly brought any internal biases that have kept Black, Indigenous, and people of color away from our organization. And I really think that with every decision that we make regarding access for the disabled, is this also going to possibly negatively affect those audiences returning to our organization and feeling unwelcome? And so I would be really remiss if I didn't say something about it in this forum now.
Thank you, Rich. And let's let that be the question we're leaving everyone with. We're pretty close to the hour mark now. I want to thank you all so much for being here. And I look forward to our coming together next week, July 7th, when we are doing Keeping Museum Tactile Experiences Safe and Viable. So we hope to see you there. Stay safe, stay strong. Miss you all. Bye-bye.